We're here to talk about the Bachelor of Science in Environmental Science and the Bachelor of Science and Bachelor of Arts in Environmental Practice. So today with me, I have Dr. Mickie Noble. Do you want to say hi, Mickie?
Hi, everybody. Nice to see you all here.
And I have Dr. Chris Ling.
Hi, everybody.
I'm very excited to be with them both because they have so much knowledge on the program, so you'll learn a lot, I'm sure. And my name is Nancy Prevost-Maurice. I'm an education specialist here at Railroads University. And behind the scene, we have Carla, that is our enrollment advisor, that will be posting a few links in the chat, and those links will be shared after the session. And we have a few people from the School of Environment and Sustainability. So thank you, everyone, for joining and helping me in this webinar today. And before we get started, it's very important for us at Railroads to acknowledge the Indigenous land that we are on. Maybe you know which land you're joining on from today, so please use the chat to introduce yourself and let us know which land, Indigenous land, you're joining us from. So it is with deep gratitude here that we learn, play, work on those ancestral land of the Lekwungen and Cosapsan families and nations. Thank you. Always a pleasure to learn with Indigenous people and really bring Indigenous people and non-Indigenous people together as we continue healing and learning how together. And I just see more people joining, so I'll let them in. And today we'll get to know each other. I see a few people using the chat. Please continue to do so, introducing yourself, maybe your name, the program you're interested in, again, the Indigenous lands you're joining on, if you know it. And I'll do a brief overview of the Railroads University experience, and then I'll pass it over to Chris and Mickie to describe the programs, and I'll come back at the end to discuss admission requirement and maybe any question you might have. And you will see that my Zoom is a little bit slow in changing today, so I'll do my best. And here, just to get us started, I'll just play a quick video that we have that you can find on our YouTube channel.
I wanted to pursue environmental education because there's an urgent need for change, and with that comes an urgent need for people with the skills and ideas to make that change happen. The faculty at RU are always willing to talk to you. They're always available for office hours. They genuinely care about the student experience and they want you to succeed. I feel that the job prospects in this field are only going up, so it's just sustainability is the forefront of everything and times are changing. I'm pretty stoked for what's out there.
The Railroads experience is really connected to community and the things that are important in the community. The partnership with ECO lets students really fan out their influence, that really strong combination of content knowledge and the soft skills so that you can make it happen.
It's not just about the instructors delivering content, it's about bringing your experience to the table. And so it's a fulfilling way of recognizing if you're pursuing lifelong learning, that the life you've led up to that point contributes to that learning as well.
The convenience and flexibility afforded by online learning, both as a student and as a teacher, has been really invaluable. Even though it was an online format, the interaction with other classmates was really, really enriching.
The main benefit of the partnership is that Eco-Canada keeps us real. That's what I like to say. Of course, they have their certification for our students, the environmental professional and the environmental professional in training. These are fabulous credentials for our students to have. They work together, they use their networks to really benefit the sector and benefit them in their careers. Many of our students basically want to know how the world works and what their place is in it. They benefit hugely from this, and this really, I think, helps them in the job market.
Thank you, everyone. I hope that gets you excited. So we'll talk about Eco-Canada partnership that we have a bit farther in the session, but you could see some faculty, you could see the campus, and I'll just talk about the campus briefly in a few seconds. But that video kind of lead to the fact that Railroads University is a changemaker campus. So we have that Ashoka U accreditation, and there's only a few institutions in Canada and in the States that will have that accreditation, and it's all about innovation and entrepreneurship. So if you have a minute and you want to Google it and have a look, you're welcome to. And maybe you're in the audience today and you want to apply to railroads and you're thinking, okay, why will I choose railroads instead of other institutions? And here are 5 bullet points that I like using. So we see life as a qualification. From the start, when you apply at railroad, we really kind of like to know who you are, what you're bringing into the classroom. So it's about all the volunteering you have been doing in your life, work experience, school. So it's kind of a blend of everything you have been doing that matters for us. The second one, prof who know your name. That's an important one for us as well. Whoops. Because at Railroad, you're not a number. We have small cohort. I'm sure that Chris and Mickie will touch base on it. Small cohort. And since you apply at Railroad at the beginning, everybody will call you by your name. And I know that for me, it's very special. So we're not big institution with like classroom of like 200 people. So you will get to know your professors. You will get to know your colleagues really well. The third point, learning based on life. So what you have done before really impact your career, and you can bring everything that you experience in your workplace into the classroom to discuss with your colleagues and instructors. So it's really real life learning. It's not just theory, it's theory and practice linked together. Connection for life, the people you meet at railroads will most likely stay with you as you progress in your career. Many people will come back on campus sometime a few years after their degree to meet and chat. Many people stay in touch with the amazing alumni network that we have at railroads. And finally, we were built differently. And what does that mean is that Railroad University, we're quite young. We're 25, 26 years now. And when we opened our doors in 1995, it was really for working professionals. So we get it. People want to work and study and level up their career. And this is how we created our programs that have different model, blended model, different models that I'll just touch base right now. And here, just to let you know a little bit about the campus again, you signed the video. We have Hatley Castle that is quite famous. I don't know if you want to use your reaction button to do a little heart or a little thumbs up. If you saw the castle before, the castle was built in 1908, and we had many, many movies. And now we do events, weddings, a bunch of stuff at the castle. At the top right, you can see Japanese garden. We have 565 acres of land at Railroad, a lot of space to walk around if you're on campus. At the bottom left, you can see the Esquimalt Lagoon. So the full campus is facing a bird sanctuary that's very wonderful, very peaceful. And as I mentioned, the online learning for 25 years. So it's not something we had to pivot with COVID, for example. Our institution, we were ready to teach online since day one. And as I briefly mentioned, we have 3 delivery models, and Chris and Mickie will be able to touch base on this. So we have the blended model, which means that you mostly study online, but you will come on campus for a few weeks for what we call residencies or intensive learning. Or you can do your programs fully online, so you can stay home wherever you are in the world. I saw on the registration list, we have people from every country almost, so that's wonderful. Or you can decide to do your program fully on campus. And here maybe Mickie and Chris, do you want to jump in and just give us an idea of what's the difference between the 2 programs, and then we'll go a bit deeper on both programs. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Nancy. Well, I'll start and talk a little bit about the environmental science program. So the environmental science program has 2 possible routes to your degree. You can either study full-time on campus for 12 months, or you can undertake the blended program, which combines 3-week residencies on campus to do your lab and your field components, with year-long distance education courses where you're working with your cohort and still doing teamwork and all of those kinds of things throughout the year. Both of them are accredited for the Environmental Professional Accreditation through Eco-Canada, and contain significant lab and field work. So if you don't have any lab or field work because you're just switching into the environmental field, this can be a really good option for you. It is an interdisciplinary program, but you are marching along with your cohort with the courses that the course is designed with, and there aren't currently elective courses available in the program. So that's something to kind of consider. For the on-campus version of the program, there is a 12-month major project that you can work on, where you'll get significant experience in running an environmental project and all the things that kind of entails. Chris, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Mickie. So the environmental practice program does cover many of the same topics as the environmental science program. The main difference is we don't, because it's all online, we don't have the focused laboratory and fieldwork components to the program. So in some ways, it's more generalist than the environmental science program. It's also the advantage of that, though, is it's much more flexible. So because it's entirely online and you can take it to some extent at your own pace, it's easier to fit around a full-time job, for example, or if you don't want to travel, you know, if travel would be a time or a financial burden for you. It also, because it's online, we open up a number of options for different courses that happen at other institutions, for example. And so that allows you to be more flexible in the curriculum that you're approaching. So it's not as designed as the environmental science program. But if you have a particular goal in mind for your career, it may make it, may open up some other opportunities in terms of courses at other institutions. As I said, many of the core components of the environmental practice program are the same as are included in the environmental science program. And those are ones which have been identified by Eco Canada as crucial to getting success in the job market. We've worked very closely with them on what this program looks like. As you may have noticed as well from this table, it can be either a Bachelor of Science or a Bachelor of Arts degree. And that means that, you know, although the core program is the same, regardless of whether you take the Bachelor of Science or the Bachelor of Arts, the electives that you have available to you are different. It's also dependent on which one you do is dependent on your previous experience. You know, if you've done a science-focused diploma, for example, you would move into the Bachelor of Science. If you've done an arts or social science-focused diploma or have work experience or something like that aligned with those, then you move into the Bachelor of Arts. The other advantage of the flexibility that we have is that we have intakes throughout the year. So we start in January, May, or September. You know, so basically, whenever you apply, there'll be an intake date just around the corner. There's no kind of single starting course that you need to take. There's a range of courses that form part of the sort of core component of the program. Mm-hmm. And just to finish off the sort of last thing you'll do in the Bachelor of Environmental Practice is a practicum or a research paper. So that's either a standalone study that you do yourself, depending on what you're interested in, or it's a practicum that you work in a place of work to achieve some goals, and you'll work with the instructor for that practicum course to determine what those goals are for your practicum. And really, you can do whatever you like. It is up to you to arrange it, but you can do whatever you like as long as it's not what you're currently doing for your regular day-to-day job. You have to do something new.
That's wonderful, thank you. And if we continue with you, Chris, about some characteristic of the program.
Yeah, so I've covered some of this already, but it's fully online. That's saying if you do choose to take a face-to-face course that's available for external students in your home institution near where you live or something like that that's suitable for the program, we are potentially going to allow that. It won't be listed as an option, but you know, it's designed to be fully online. You take 60 credits. You can either take those credits in one course at a time. So one course is generally 3 credits, or you can take up to 3 or 4 courses at one time. And obviously, if you do that, you won't be working on it part-time, you'll be working on it full-time, but that's very much your choice. If you've done more than 2 years of prior undergraduate study, so maybe you have an advanced diploma from an Ontario college, or you started a third year of a degree program and didn't quite finish it, or you've some other way picked up third or fourth year credits, you can potentially transfer up to 15 of those credits into your program to make a head start. They have to be third or fourth year level credits, and they have to be relevant to the BEP program. But if you've done that, then that's something that you can bring in with you. As I've said before, you can also take courses from other institutions across Canada. We have, as part of our program curriculum, we have listed courses from places like Athabasca and Thompson Rivers and other institutions. And I've already discussed a little bit about the practicum or research paper option to complete the program, but I noticed there were a couple of questions coming in there. So would we also be able to leverage relevant work experience for credit? We don't, doesn't quite work like that. We do have, and we'll talk a bit about this later as well, but we do have what we call flexible admission. Which means that if you haven't got 60 credits of undergraduate education already, we can use your work and your professional and volunteer experience where relevant to offset that. We don't usually enable direct transfer of work experience as credit as such. There are occasionally opportunities for you to do what's called a prior learning assessment, which means that if you have something in your experience that can be sort of packaged as a course equivalent, you can apply and ask for that to be considered as credit, but that's not very typical, and the restrictions on doing that are quite significant. So if that's what you mean, Hasib, then kind of yes, but kind of no, if that makes any sense. And Eric, you're asking, is there a grade average for those credits? Yes, so for entry under standard admission, you need to have a GPA of 3.0, I think, off the top of my head. If you're coming in for the BSc, then you also need 18 credits of specifically science education, which also has to average out as a B. And to transfer in credits at the third and fourth year level, I believe we can accept credits of C+ or higher as transfer credits, provided they're not in, obviously they wouldn't be able to be credits that you've already used as part of your 60 credits for entry. Thank you, Carla. It's just posted, yeah. So there are different grade averages for the sort of standard 60 credits for admission, and then additional credits that you might be able to transfer is slightly different. But I think that's me done for the BEP, unless there's any more questions.
I think I see another question about about the practicum. I think Eric was asking, what does that involve, or would you have maybe an example or two of what it looks like?
Yeah, so it really is very variable on exactly what people do for their practicum. It very much depends on the contacts that they have and the employers they have. They can get a connection with. If you bear with me just a second, I can have a look and get a couple of examples for you. All right, so here we have practicum such as somebody who created a state of environment report for Salt Spring Island in partnership with an environmental consultant who was local to Salt Spring Island, which is one of the Gulf Islands in the vicinity of Victoria, for those that aren't familiar with the geography around here. We also have someone who looked at a sustainability management system for a mining company. Got someone else who did some wildlife conservation for an looking at a specific bird species in France. So, you know, that gives you three quick examples, which hopefully gives you an indication of the variety and the type of projects people get involved with. And then Duncan's asking, in terms of the online environmental practice, have there been any opportunities to take courses with lab or field work through other institutions? Yes, there are. We don't list those because we only specifically list courses we're aware of that are suitable that are online courses. However, if there's something with your local institution that you'd like to do that's face-to-face, then all you need to do is ask for what we call special permission to take a course that's not currently given standard approval. We do, for those people who are living locally here in Victoria, we often get people who take courses on the University of Victoria's Environmental Restoration Program, for example, which involves a field experience. But again, it depends what's available locally or where you're prepared to travel to. We don't currently have any specific lab or field work courses formally listed as already included in the program, but yeah, definitely people can apply for special permission to take those courses where they wish to.
Would you like to continue with the program goal, Chris?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, so I mean, this slide sort of lays out what we hope our students will achieve through taking the Bachelor of Environmental Practice program, and we have plenty of evidence that they do. So you know, we're fairly confident that our curriculum does meet these requirements. And as I said, it's because we co-developed this with Eco Canada directly. It's very much in line with what they are seeing as required skills in the environmental professions in Canada currently. So, you know, they support us constantly with, you know, updates on the job market in environmental professions, which is looking really healthy right now, and it's only expanding. So you can be confident that with the skills you get in, and this goes for Mickie's program as well, it's the skills that you get are very much aligned with the environmental job market as it currently exists. And just an example, and I think there may have been someone who was asking about what kind of it looks like as you go through the environmental practice program. But here we have two examples of paths. These are real student experiences. Although obviously the names and the precise context is not real, but the actual description of what somebody has done as a result of taking the Bachelor of Environmental Practice program is a real case. So this first example is someone who wanted to complete their degree as quickly as they could, and they just wanted to take the Bachelor of Science in Environmental Practice. And they did, in their first 2 years, they got what we call the Block A part of the program, the core courses completed, and then moved on to their electives during their second year, and managed to then complete their whole program with a research paper at the end in 33 months. So roughly 2.5 years. It is sort of mathematically possible, depending on when you start the program, to complete it in 2 years. But but really the typical fast-paced approach gets you to the end in between 2 and 3 years. It slightly depends on when you start, because the capstone courses are only offered once a year. So if you don't start in a cycle which kind of aligns with that particularly well, you will make a difference to how fast or slowly you can complete the program. And then the second example of a pathway is, we only got one in this one. All right.
I think I just put one. I'm sorry. Yeah.
That's okay. When we just do a webinar for just the Bachelor of Environmental Practice programs, we have 2 pathways, and one is an example of someone who takes it slow and does it over 7 years. So you can take up to 7 years to complete the program, but we don't have that now. But
yeah, and Chris, I have a question about it. Someone that will take 7 years, that means that the person will stop most likely in different courses?
Sorry, say that again, please, Nancy.
Yeah, if someone is taking more time, as you mentioned, 5 to 7 years, that means the person will take one course, pause maybe for a few months and go back? Or is it that every course is a bit longer?
No, it means that they take, each course is the same length. So you take a course and well, for the courses at Royal Roads, they're all roughly 10 weeks long. Some are a bit shorter, some are a bit longer. But on average, they're 10 weeks. The due dates and things within those courses are fixed, but you don't have to. You can take them. You can take courses. You can start courses when it's convenient for you to do so. Things work differently at other institutions, so you'd have to, depending on what elective courses you were interested in, you'd have to look into the rules at those places. So what someone who's taking a long time, as up to 7 years, is typically they'll be doing one course at a time.
Okay.
That would get them through, through the program in sufficient time. Duncan asked a question about what is manageable for students working full-time or part-time. Each of our courses at Royal Roads are 3 credits, and 3 credits brings approximately 99 hours of student effort. And for most people, that therefore will mean when they're taking the course, it's going to be roughly 10 hours a week per course. Now, obviously, that'll vary quite a lot, depending on your own personal speed of working, your skill on the particular course that you're doing. Work may not be distributed evenly throughout the course, so it may be that it's a bit quieter at the beginning, a bit more intense at the end, or some other pattern. But on average, that's the kind of 10 hours a week per course is typically what you should expect to make. So for someone who's working full-time, 1 course is manageable. 2 courses depends how many friends and family you have. 3 courses, you're pretty much going to be dedicating all your spare time to your education. Obviously, if you're then working part-time, you'll have more capacity to work at other times. So hopefully that gives you some idea. It's very much a personal capacity decision, though. And then Vanessa's asking, how are online classes delivered? So for Royal Roads classes, they are delivered asynchronously, which means you don't have to be available at any specific time or place to receive the content. There are sometimes instructors will have live sessions where if you are available, you can join them live. However, they will always be recorded for those people that are not available to attend at that time. Some instructors also record lectures. Others, it's entirely delivered through asynchronous forums and readings and other interactive exercises online. So there is quite a range of types of material that are delivered in online courses. But with the Royal Roads classes, then there is no expectation that you're available at any specific time to engage. At other institutions, it varies. So some are entirely self-paced, and you never have to interact with anybody during the course of the class. Others will have more kind of formal formal sort of interactive time at particular times of the day or week, but you'd have to sort of look into that when you're thinking about what courses you wish to take.
Very informative. Thank you so much. And I think, Mickie, I'll pass it over to you to learn about your program.
Okay. Thanks, Nancy and Chris. Okay, so for our on-campus program, year 3 and year 4 are completed over 1 calendar year. So you start in September and you finish at the end of August. It is a very intensive experience. You will get to know everybody in your cohort really, really well. And generally there is 10 weeks of classes in a term, followed by an exam week, and then a break week before your next set of courses starts. In the blended program, you have three 3-week residencies, which both provide some functionality around getting to know your cohort before you go head off and get online, but also provide space for your lab and field components for courses like chemistry or ecology. And so years 3 and 4 in that program are completed over basically 2 calendar years plus 3 weeks. When students ask sort of which of those they should choose, it really depends on, are you somebody that needs to know that Monday at 9 o'clock you're taking this course, in which case being on campus might be better for you. If you have extensive family commitments or community commitments that make it impossible to come to Victoria, then the blended program might be for you. But similar to what happens with Chris's program, you need to be kind of protective of your homework time, so that your family and friends know when they can expect you to be available for events and when to not bother calling because you're holed up with your homework. Both versions of the BSc program are integrated and interdisciplinary, meaning you will be a generalist. You'll get lots of experience in all kinds of different natural sciences, but you'll also get experience with topics like sustainable development, economics, environmental law, land use and planning, statistics, communications, and those kinds of things, as well as your major project and your comprehensives, which are opportunities to really integrate the learning that you're doing across a number of different courses and programs.
And Mickie, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the major projects, could you tell us a little bit about the biodiversity map? Was it one of the projects?
It was one of last year's major projects. It was a very exciting project that was undertaken by 4 of the BSc students last year. They were doing an interactive biodiversity map of the campus. And so they had data from drone flights and recordings of birdsong that they'd had identified, and all kinds of endangered plants and animals that they were mapping on the campus, that they put together with some really interesting interactive video to make available to the university. So it was a pretty exciting project from last year. One of the other projects was designing an in-house testing bed for microplastics. Another project was looking at garden soil and different plants that one might use to remove excess metals from garden soil, and how that gets communicated out to the community. So lots of different ways to get lab and field experience as part of the program. The 20,000.
Sorry, I think I'm going a bit too fast here, but I think that's all we have. I'm just trying to see in the chat. Thank you, Carla, for putting the courses there. And just a reminder, yeah, I have a question here. So someone is asking, so your program, Mickie, this one will be twice a year. And I think we'll get back to this in the application.
Yeah. So the BSc program for the on-campus program has an intake every September. The blended program has an intake every mid-April, with your residency occurring the first 3 weeks of May.
Okay. And I see Vanessa is asking, what kind of field and lab work will be done? in the BSc program?
It varies a little from course to course. So, I mean, you'll be doing water quality testing. You'll be designing some testing protocols in the ecotoxicology course for looking at pulp effluent in a number of different systems. You do all kinds of environmental chemistry. We have you testing sawdust for copper content for telephone poles. There is field work where you'll be using X-ray fluorescence to measure metals and sediment and soils. John's got you outside for ecology, measuring trees and light distribution and vegetation plots. It's really hard to say everything you're going to do because many major projects also have lab and field components, and those may vary considerably in any given year depending on what the sponsor has asked for. So yeah, could be lots and lots of different things.
Wonderful. And I see that Vanessa was asking almost about what kind of job we can get after graduating, and Duncan is going along this, and I'm sure both of you have answered, and I'll make sure to share the last Eco-Canada webinar we did, because they had amazing slides about all the opportunities that students from Royal Road can get. But yeah, I think people are interested of stats or what people will do after both programs.
For the BSc program, it really depends on what you want to do next. There are, of course, a lot of students that go into environmental consulting with consulting firms.
Okay.
Lots of students become environmental officers for all kinds of industries, NGOs, private businesses of various kinds, provincial government. I've had a number of students that have gone on and gotten teaching certificates, and so they actually teach school with an environmental evidence emphasis. 2 or 3 doctors through the program, quite a few environmental lawyers at this point. So the question is really more around, where do you want to go next? Lots of policy folks for provincial government. Yeah, all kinds of opportunities. It really kind of depends on what you want to do next.
Yeah, and I would say much the same for the Bachelor of Environmental Practice program. We don't really have very good statistics, unfortunately, simply because people don't respond to surveys when they get sent them. So, we can only, you can't run statistics if your sample is too small. So, but anecdotally from people who we stay in touch with, and I'm sure this is where Mickie's getting her information from too. It's all the sort of examples that Mickie have listed. We also can have from the Bachelor of Environmental Practice. I would say a few other positions. We get quite a lot of people who work as environmental officers or sustainability officers for both First Nations and settler communities, municipal governments and such like. We also get quite a few people who work in organizations such as Parks Canada. There are people who, lots of people who go into environmental consultancy in various different forms and shades. So, plenty of opportunities. And yeah, the best place to go and look at for the sort of the state of the job market is the Eco-Canada web pages. They have lots and lots of really good research and reporting on who's going where. So definitely have a look at that. It's also, of course, just to sort of add to that, and I think this would apply certainly to the Bachelor of Environmental Practice, but I suspect also to particularly the blended version of the Environmental Science program. It's because a lot of folks come to us, they already have work experience. So what they go into is not just dependent on what they've done as a degree with us. It's also, what they've got from their previous work experience as well. And so a lot of people are taking our programs to advance in their existing careers, not just to find new ones, which also sort of skews a little bit, the answer to the question, sort of what can you get as a result of having the environmental practice or the environmental science program under your belt.
Yeah, I would agree with Chris, particularly in the blended program where folks tend to be a little bit older and already have some significant work experience. Lots of them are looking to move up within their organizations and take on more management roles. where they're managing folks that are doing field work or similar kinds of data collection.
Very good points. Thank you both. And I see in the chat there's a question about tuition fees. So I'll see with Carla if we can find you some data about it. If there's, I'm not sure if Mickie would know if the on-campus versus the online option.
Those have got the same tuition.
Okay.
So
it's slightly harder to give a precise figure for the Bachelor of Environmental Practice program because we don't control the tuition fees at other institutions. So that's quoted on our website as a per credit tuition fee for courses that you take at Royal Roads, and then people will take it'll vary a bit between individuals, and whether or not they're bringing in some transfer credits as well will also affect that.
I can give some general information for tuition. So for environmental science program, the reason why the September 2023 on the website says to be determined, TBD, is that generally our tuition there's an annual increase which occurs September 1st of every year. So likely that hasn't been finalized at this time. Typically, the tuition cost is the same for the on-campus and the blended of environmental science. There may be differing ancillary fees. I don't know though. I don't know if Mickie, if you know if there's like
I don't know off the top of my head. Yeah, that's not usually something I'm dealing with.
Yeah, so those are typically in the payment schedule it will lay out, and there are typically for environmental science and a lot of our programs 2 payment options of paying lump sum of that amount over the 2 years for the blended, or installment fees of essentially like monthly fees. Environmental practice, it is typically broken down and you pay course by course, unless like for Royal Roads courses, and then you pay separate to the other institutions if attending through other institutions. So hopefully that gives a little more information in relation to tuition costs.
That's wonderful, Carla. Yeah, thank you so much. And I think I see 2 other questions, great question too about residency. How does that work for the blended option? What does that mean?
Okay, so when you come for 3-week residency, it is 3 very busy weeks. You can expect to be in class from 8 to 5, 5 days a week with teamwork and other things and homework happening in the evenings and on the weekends. It will include lab, as I said, lab and field components, but you're also generally starting a couple of courses during that period as well that'll be contained within that 3 weeks. And they tend to be things that don't lend themselves as well to being taught exclusively online. So, things with labs, obviously. But also in some cases, things like courses that are quite math heavy tend to be difficult to do exclusively online. And so we found from our past experience that students have a better experience when they're dealing with an in-person situation for those. Yeah, I'm not sure what else to say about that. Many students choose to stay on campus for that 3 weeks, but it's not a requirement. So, you can book your favorite Airbnb or whatever. I tend not to suggest staying with family during those 3 weeks because if you're traveling to Victoria, because people want to visit and you're going to be really antisocial and it'll make you feel really bad. But, if you do choose to do something like that, maybe stay a couple of days on either end so that you can do some family things. But yeah, hope that answers the question.
That's wonderful. And I think when we talk with students and graduates, that's the part that they recall the most, right? The residency can be quite intense, but people normally are like, wow, that was one of the highlights of the program. Yeah.
It really gives you that chance to really get to know your cohort and your classmates. And because you really get that time together, it makes interacting online much easier than if you'd never met those folks or if you'd only met them online.
Yeah. And I think another question I see from Frank would be, what adjustments are made to accommodate Indigenous cultural and other circumstances? Sorry, and I know, Frank, we have, for example, we have an Indigenous department. So we have Indigenous engagement students and people working with us that will kind of supply, I don't know if supply is the good word, support you and work with Indigenous students throughout the year. So you have, for example, I was there yesterday, a place on campus called Blue Heron House, where you can have gathering, you can meet with Indigenous student services and other Indigenous students. So I don't know if the programs of Mickie and Chris, I don't know if there's anything particular or if it depends from instructor to instructor. But I know if I can just talk for myself being a student, I feel that Railroad is very accommodating for deadline and stuff like this when life happens, because we know life will happen.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. I'm still learning what I don't know, honestly, in that area. So I'm very grateful to have some really great support from the Indigenous education folks, because they've been really, really helpful. I think instructors are trying very hard to try and incorporate some of those kinds of ideas, just in the effort of making it a more welcoming experience for everybody, regardless of whether they're Indigenous or non-Indigenous or not from Canada, to give that broader perspective. So yeah, I don't know that I can speak to anything specific per se, but as I said, that's still something that I'm personally undertaking as some personal learning at this point.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment, and I would also say that the general culture at Railroads is to try and accommodate what we can accommodate. So there's whatever the circumstances are that you're thinking about, Frank. The chances are they've come up before, and there's we have ways of accommodating whatever needs accommodating. So if it's a medical issue, there's a unit which can assess that and determine what the appropriate accommodations are. If it's a personal issue that's come up, then typically a conversation with the instructor and or then the program head will find a pathway to deal with that. But it's all done very much on a case-by-case basis. There's no kind of strict rules around this, and this, other than when it comes down to, sort of our expectations of things like, respect for others and things like that. So, it's hard to give specifics because lots of issues rise with lots of people all the time. And we do try and accommodate those where possible.
Where we can. Wonderful. And before I move on with the application process, I think one other question, that's a great one. If we start, Mickie, with your program, for example, in the blended version, and then we find the person say, find behind, can you go into the into the on-campus? Oh, sorry, I think I misunderstood. Okay, we can, because I think, Vanessa, your question, I see that we're talking of blended and online, so it might be both programs together. I'm not quite sure to understand the question.
Okay, well, for the BSc program, yes, it is certainly possible to transfer from the on-campus to the blended program or vice versa.
Oh, okay.
It may mean that you're, depending on how much of one of those programs you've taken, it may result in some like holes in your timetable because you've taken courses in a slightly different order. But it's certainly not difficult to do. And it's certainly something that we've had experience doing. For instance, if a student came to an on-campus program and then for whatever reason, we're going to be more academically successful from home, we've certainly transferred them to the blended program, or somebody that started the blended program and then realized, oh, you know what, I really need to be in the classroom with other people. That can also be done quite easily. So.
Great.
Yeah, and really just from the BEP folks, we don't get too many people that move from the BEP to the environmental science program, but we do occasionally get people who move from the environmental science program to the BEP program, especially if they find that the pace of the environmental science program is a bit quick for them as a result of their other obligations. So, you know, that does happen. It's relatively easy with the sort of caveats that Mickie just mentioned. And just to sort of quickly respond to Duncan's question about the significance of the word practice. That's really because the terminology that's often used by Eco-Canada is they describe people in the environmental field as practitioners. So that's why we've called it environmental practice. So they use that word a lot. Practitioners and professionals. It means just that your professional practice is in the environment.
Wonderful. Yeah, great question. And thank you, everyone. So much interaction in the chat. I really like it. It makes the presentation very formative. So I won't take too long. I want to respect everybody's time. I know we're already at 10 minutes before the end, but let's talk about the application process. And thank you, Carla, because I see all the links have been provided. I'll make sure to share those links with the recording about all the admission requirement, the schedule, program tuition, everything. So at Royal Roads, what we do really well is what we call a standard admission or flexible admission. So I know there's a lot of wording on this slide if you want to have a look, but everything is on the website. If you want to apply, and I think Chris really well mentioned it a few times, so if you want to apply to the Bachelor of Science, you will need some science background with 18 credits. That must be science credit. And the minimum GPA most likely will be a B in most programs. I know we discussed about if you completed the certificate in environmental practice, but I think this one is no longer delivered. But if you have done it in the past and now you want to apply, that will be considered. Yes,
it hasn't been on offer and delivered for many, many years, but there are still folks who potentially come to the BEP from have it. So.
Yeah, exactly. So people can, if they have that certificate, they can apply, and that's what we call the standard admission. And then the BA in environmental practice, as you can see, we ask for 60 credits from a post-secondary institution with that GPA of B and the same certificate. And I think most people, at Royal Road, we say almost 50-50, people will come through standard admission, but if you don't recognize yourself there, we can talk about flexible admission. And I think my other slide will be about the BSc program, same thing. So I think for the BSc, the program that Mickie just described, you need a completion of an approved transfer program with a minimum of B, or you have to have done those prerequisite courses that are listed at the bottom. And I know it's pretty small, but again, on the website, it's very well described and you can find more information. And this is why we love to have Carla with us, because the amazing thing of enrollment advisor can always look with you what you have done in the past with your school and if it's eligible for standard admission. And when you're not eligible for standard admission, then we do flexible. And it's not something you have to check anywhere when you apply. It's really just the amazing team in the enrollment and admission department at Royal Roads that will just have a look at your documents and at your transcript and determine if you can come to the program as a standard or flexible. So flexible here, it's mostly based on experience. So 5 years for what we call the BEP. If you have all the school experience, but you don't have the GPA, then we ask for 3 years of work of relevant volunteer experience. And I think I was reading as well for the BSc program, you need those prerequisite courses with a B if you don't have the other requirement. And we will ask you to have some significant experience. Does that make sense, Mickie and Chris? I don't know if you want to jump in.
Yeah, just to emphasize, if you apply anyway, Carla and her team will help you figure out what you're missing. And if Carla's not sure, they will ask Chris or I. If you are a member of the Canadian Armed Forces, also please send your training record, because very often you have relevant experience or relevant coursework that is effectively hidden in your training record that may not be obvious otherwise.
Yeah, and I see a question, good point, Brianne, about how to apply, where do I go? So that will be on the Railroads website. So railroads.ca, you have a section how to apply, and you have 10 easy steps to follow. So first, you'll start by giving $131.39 as the online application fee, and then you'll start submitting your documents. So we most likely ask for the official transcript. So any education, post-secondary education you have done in the past, you will be asked to send a transcript to the admission office. And then if the admission office decides that you need more documents because you'll be going through flexible admission, then we'll ask of you a detailed resume, personal statement, and letters of reference. And a quick tip that I like to give that I did when I applied 2 years ago, I think now, was I wrote down my personal statement, really saying who I am, why I want to apply to the program, really digging into all the experiences I had in climate change, for example. And then you take that letter of statement and you share it with people that will write the letters of reference. So they really understand your why, your purpose, and they can write a letter for you that will help your acceptance in the program.
It's also a good place if you've had academic difficulties in the past and there are extenuating circumstances, it's also a great place to explain those things as well.
Very true. And here we have the upcoming intakes, but I think
just before we move on, Nancy, actually, so Vanessa had a question about what kind of references.
Oh, good.
So, well, ideally, there would be one sort of academic reference. If you haven't got any academic references to draw from, then 2 professional references are needed. Basically, what we're looking for in those references is to, first of all, sort of validate what you're saying is the basis of your admission. So, if you're coming in as flexible assessment and you have some work experience that you think is relevant to that, you want someone who can validate that work experience and say, what a great person you were when you were doing that job. And then also to, give us a better understanding of your if there is a deficiency in your GPA, for example, as Mickie mentioned, maybe because you were going through a tough time when you were doing your diploma and you've since built up those skills and you moved on into a different phase of your life, then those references can help us sort of understand that journey and that growth that's occurred. So maybe it's not reflected in your GPA, but you do actually have those really good skills that you now have through that work experience. So I hope that kind of answers your question. It's just more evidence for us to determine that what you don't have in your academic transcript, you actually have in your real life.
That's exactly it. Thank you both for jumping in. And here again, all the intakes you can take per year. And I know the deadline for January has passed, but as Chris, you kindly mentioned, it's really people, if they apply now, they can just come for May as well. So it's kind of a rolling for this program. It's pretty easy to get in because we have so many dates available. I'm just looking at the chat again. Perfect. Carla is just adding more stuff here. That's amazing.
Just to correct, actually, Carla, so that if you're applying to the BSc in Environmental Science, that's a different prerequisite set of courses. For the Bachelor of Environmental Practice, the BSc in Environmental Practice, that's where you need the 18 science credits.
Yeah, and this is why it gets a bit confusing to do the flexible with both programs.
And the difference is really because you're doing much more specific science in the BSc Environmental Science program with the chemistry and the biology. And so if you didn't have those specific courses, it would be a struggle for you to be able to keep up with that program. Whereas we want to make sure in the BSc Environmental Practice that you do have a science background and some science training, but the specifics of that aren't as important for what you then may go on to do in the actual program. So that's why.
That's the why. Wonderful. Yeah. And just before we wrap up the session, again, thank you everyone for being so active with asking questions. We love that. And when you apply at Railroad, different services available to you. You can always connect with Chris, Mickie, myself, or Carla directly, or you can always use the learn.more@railroads.ca. That's an easy email to remember. And then you'll be in touch with an admission advisor, enrollment advisor, and they will follow up with you with questions or anything. If you're not sure still with which program you want to move to, they can help you with that. And I always recommend people to have a look at the website. So maybe you take a picture of the screen here, just to really visit the financial aid. So you will see all the internal and external grants and loans that are available to you, because we know that going back to school or continuing your education is a big step. And I'll close the session here. If there's no more question, I'll just go back to the chat. That was my last slide. Thank you so much for joining us. Everybody is saying thank you.
So just to answer this last question from Eric, I don't think, I mean, they can to some extent be anything. The detail, the detail will be in it, sort of the course description. So, you know, if we get some borderline classes, then we will often, you know, follow up and have a look on the websites of the institutions or what we know. So in the examples that you give, I suspect that linguistics might be a stretch. Psychology can sometimes go either way. And the, so I've lost the chat thing. Cognitive science, again, I'd have to look at the, we'd have to look at the precise details of that course to know whether we were counted or not, but potentially, and yeah.
Yeah, it's a one-on-one conversation with the enrollment advisor, totally.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And do you want to jump in? I think there's another question from Vanessa here. Is there a minimum courses required to take at a time for the blended option and still be considered a full-time student?
You would still be considered to be a full-time student, and that's probably something we should clarify. You would be enrolled in a full-time program, or be considered to be a full-time program, because you have your 3 residencies, but then you're generally only doing 1 or 2 courses at a time as you march through that year-long distance process. Whether that is considered full-time for things like student loans varies from province to province. And for that question, I would definitely recommend talking to the financial aid officer to get firm information on that.
Yeah.
And for the Bachelor, I know you said specifically the blended option, Vanessa, but if you were thinking of the online option, the Bachelor of Environmental Practice, then yeah, I would totally echo Mickie's point. The rules vary from place to place, and I don't know if I can't recall if you mentioned earlier if you're Canadian based or international based, but if you bring in the international dimension, it's even more flexibility, a variation in what's considered full time or not. So yeah, definitely follow up with the local rule makers to find out what that is, and with our admissions advisors and financial aid, and they have much better grasp on that kind of question than we do.
Exactly. Thank you again so much, everyone. So feel free to email us if you have any question. I see many thanks in the chat. So that was lovely to spend an hour with you, and we hope to see you at Railroad. I see some people say that they will apply, so we'll see you on campus or online. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Thanks everybody. Bye now.